Well, you're welcome to Joe Daily Brief. And today, as usual, as mostly we do, we're here to bring you some of the latest news that's happening today. And mostly, what we do is we bring you updates on the latest news. That pops up. So what we are doing, we are covering today's issue, the major issue that happened. So that is in Minneapolis. What happened? So remember, ICE agent fatally shoots a woman. So normally what we do, we go through some of the stories. Then after that, we show you some of the visuals. That's what we will be doing today. So let's start and show it. An immigration and customs enforcement agent opened fire on a car in Minneapolis, Minnesota on Wednesday, that is today, killing the driver, a 37-year-old woman named Renee Nicole. Federal officials are alleging that the shooting, which was captured in multiple videos, was self-defense, while local officials are disputing that and calling for ICE to leave the city. The incident comes amidst a controversial surge of 2,000 federal officers to Minneapolis as the Trump administration seeks to revamp up immigration enforcement. So that was what happened today. So there was someone who was shot, and if you really want to get it, what we'll be doing is you will take our first report from CBS, to start from there, so that after that we would also give you another section of it, another angle of the reportage. So this is it. Let's take a listen to this CBS report from Minneapolis. Then after that, we zoom in straight to what Tim Walls and others has been saying this afternoon.
Citizen, and we want to warn you, this next video may be disturbing to some viewers. Descriptions of exactly what happened vary. You can see one of the vantage points on your screen here. Witnesses tell CBS that federal agents were blocking that Honda Pilot, sort of a maroon color. The Minneapolis police chief says she was blocking the roadway. One agent tried opening the driver's side door, which was locked. You're going to see that moment right here. The driver then puts the car in reverse, then forward, and that's when shots were fired. At least 3 shots audibly in the video, killing the driver. That car then moves forward and hits some other cars on the side of the road. A Homeland Security Department spokesperson says the woman was deliberately trying to ram into the officers. Secretary Kristi Noem characterized her actions as an act of domestic terrorism. The shooting comes as the Trump administration launches its largest deployment yet of federal agents to the Twin Cities. Around 2,000 agents were sent there as part of an immigration crackdown and investigation into alleged fraud. Earlier during an event in Texas, Secretary Noem spoke about the shooting. An officer.
So what we'll do is we will bring you the full session of this press conference, but let's take a listen to a few of it.
Of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him. And my understanding is that she was hit and is deceased.
Local officials are disputing those claims. Secretary Noem is expected to speak shortly from Minneapolis about the incident. We will monitor that and bring you updates when it happens. Minnesota's Democratic Walls offered condolences to the victim's family and says he doesn't want or need the federal government's presence in his state.
We've been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear.
CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga begins our coverage from Minneapolis.
ICE agents were in the neighborhood for an enforcement operation, and residents were honking horns and blowing whistles.
There was a red SUV parked right in front of our house.
Aiden and Grace Perzana say they saw the entire scene from their home and that several officers surrounded the SUV.
A third person in also camouflage fatigues came and started pulling on the driver's side door handle, at which point the vehicle backed up a few feet and started driving forward. The agent who was on the driver's side originally, who was not pulling on the handle but had been there prior to that, shot 2 or 3 times through the driver's side window. The car drove a 30, 40 feet and crashed into another car in the telephone pole.
It was an act of domestic terrorism.
Speaking in Texas, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said agents were acting in self-defense after their vehicle was stuck in the snow.
They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle.
The shooting quickly sparked protests and outrage. Just this week, the Trump administration launched its biggest crackdown on illegal immigration, sending about 2,000 agents into the Twin Cities. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry.
What they are doing is not to provide safety in America. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust.
He demanded ICE leave the city and urged residents to remain calm. Nicole Skenga, CBS News, Minneapolis.
CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman joins us now. Obviously, Katrina, social media blew up after this, and there are really heightened emotions on either side. We need to wait for a lot of the facts here, but we did learn the identity of the woman who was shot. And what else are you learning?
That's correct. So we've learned.
So what I'll do is I'll give you an eyewitness account before I go back to Homeland Security Secretary Christine. So first, let's take a listen to this report from NBC News. That would definitely help us with an eyewitness giving us what they saw.
The aftermath. I want to thank you both for being here on what is obviously a very hectic and emotional day. So Lynette, you witnessed the shooting, correct? Explain to me what you saw and how.
Right. Well, I got up this morning because I was getting messages on social media that our local elementary school over here 2 blocks away was requesting observers to be there while the children were arriving for school on buses because ICE had been patrolling around there quite heavily today, and there was concern that that they would abduct parents who were dropping off their children or making sure their children got safely to school. So that ended, and so it was about 9:30, and I walked actually on this intersection where you can see towards that intersection, and I was going to go home, and a guy in a car drove by me and another friend who were walking along there, and he said, "Oh, ICE is right there around the corner in the 3300 block of Portland Avenue." So I thought, oh, I better see what's happening there. I have my video with my phone camera. I should observe there and make sure everybody's okay. So I walked around the corner, and there were a lot of ICE vehicles stopped in the middle of the street, not quite where you see it would be north to the right of what you're looking at right now. And I was also surprised there was one vehicle, you're looking at it now, that was sort of askew in the lane. And I wasn't sure what was going on with that. I didn't see any ICE vehicles or ICE officers in front of it. It seemed that all the activity was pretty far behind it. Vehicles and ICE officers on foot on both sides of the street. And I was thinking, oh, they must be targeting a house or an apartment or something like that. So I was looking at all of that, and there were several of us, I would say, kind of scattered up and down the block on the sidewalks, yelling at the ICE officials. And then shortly after I passed this vehicle, I would say less than 60 seconds after I passed her, I heard these 3 pops, shot, 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 pop, pop, pop. And I knew it was gunfire, and it was pop, pop, pop. And then almost immediately the crash of her hitting that parked car you can kind of see up there across the street. Yeah. It wasn't clear to me if she had been parked. There's a parking line, and then where the ICE officers are standing, you can sort of see the stripes. That's a big bicycle lane. So like the driving lanes are way over there. Right now, she's moving into the driving lane right now. No, and there is no way.
Wait, Lynette, can I stop you? I want to make a point there. So the area that is covered in snow, that's actually a bike lane. That would not even be an area that a car would drive through, is what you're saying.
Right. Well, it's a parking lane, and then you'd have to drive across it to get out of the parked area by the curb.
No vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So that would indicate, at least to a certain extent, why the car may have been there. But as you said, so when you approached, the car was kind of in that spot. We see it at the beginning. It was kind of almost in the driving lane, but still in that bike lane to a certain extent. Could you tell at that? Yeah. Could you tell at that point, was there any sort of conflict? Were ICE agents yelling at the driver? Was the driver yelling back? Did you see any sense of that? Yeah.
People were blowing their whistles at the ICE agents. The ICE agents were getting out of vehicles possibly and walking towards, they were walking in that direction, but I did not realize they might be walking towards that vehicle.
And I
it
guess
didn't seem like the subject to be anything, any kind of target.
So you didn't have any sort of sense when you were walking up then that this vehicle was in any way threatening anyone? It didn't seem as though the person in the car was trying to agitate or make the situation more difficult for the ICE agents.
No, I didn't even hear anything from the car. People on the sidewalks were screaming at the ICE agents, like, get out of our neighborhood, that sort of thing. But and like, we were blowing whistles and stuff like that. But no.
So then, Venus, So, Venus, if we can bring you into the conversation, then at what point did you recognize and realize that something was happening, and what was your experience?
So Lynette texted me because she couldn't come over and find out what had happened because the ICE agents were pushing everybody away.
They immediately pushed everybody back.
Yes. So I went out because we live nearby and I could come in from the other angle, and I got to the intersection and I discovered that they were the EMTs were doing CPR on someone on the sidewalk right at the intersection. That lasted for about a minute. She was behind a snowbank, so I just saw the activity of doing the CPR. The ambulances couldn't get there because there was so much traffic.
The ICE vehicles had, it's a one-way going south. The ICE vehicles had the complete block north of her, behind her, blocked.
So when they finally did get over there, I watched as they got whoever they were doing the CPR on, onto a stretcher, and then put her into the ambulance and drove away. But there was no rush, there was no sirens. I already knew she hadn't made it. It was just devastating to watch, and I was just across the street from it. And
so you both live in this neighborhood, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you recognize the car? Would you have known the woman that was in the car? Or
no,
do you have any?
We don't know her.
Right. Okay.
I mean, at this point, we don't know that we know her. I mean, I didn't recognize the car. It's it's a busy neighborhood. Portland Avenue is a busy street. It's one of the arteries going south of downtown, especially in the second half of the day. It's a busy street.
I'm interested in something else you said, Lynette, because we've all seen the aftermath. We've seen the actual incident and the aftermath, and it seemed as though this was a pretty chaotic scene for quite a period of time. But the way you describe it is, as you were walking up, you didn't even realize that there was something going on. I mean, you knew there were ICE agents in the area because of the community group that you have and the situation at your elementary school. Did it really not get that chaotic until the car started pulling out, or was there a sense of tension even before that moment from your viewpoint of it?
It didn't get chaotic until the shots were fired.
Right. It was.
I mean, I was able to cross the street. I'd started crossing the street to get to the other side to see if something was going on over on that side, because I couldn't see much of anything on the even side of the street. And so I was able to cross because the traffic was stopped. ICE agents were all around. Nobody was preventing me from doing anything. It wasn't until I was still in the street, maybe halfway across it, and I heard the shots behind me. And that's when things got bad.
So I guess that also, I mean, you said you don't know this woman. The president of the United States has described her as a professional agitator. That's his language. But as far as you know, she wasn't even a part of this text group you had that was alerting people to ICE agents being in the area.
Yeah, I have no idea who she was.
No. There was, it did not look, didn't look like there was any blockade or any intentional trying to, I mean, it was just, we were trying to pay attention to there was a lot of activity in our neighborhood that we got alerted to since about 6:30 in the morning.
And it's continuing. I mean, my social media is blowing up. This has not even stopped them. They are picking up people all over the place.
Yeah. But there wasn't a big chaotic scene before the shooting. That's when it sparked.
Yeah.
And that's when people rushed out and asked. And there was not a lot of people out there. It didn't start turning into a protest or people trying to document until after that incident. When I was filming the CPR happening, there was still just a handful of us out there. It was not this big chaotic thing. It was just like maybe 25 of us out there, neighbors who came out. It was not a big chaotic scene.
And did either of you at any point see a DHS or ICE vehicle that appeared to be stuck in the snow? I mean, I can't imagine. You're Minnesotans. You know how to drive in snow.
I heard there was one on the 3300 block of Park.
But anywhere near the scene? Anywhere near the scene that you witnessed?
Well, it would be 2 blocks away. 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
But nothing directly connected to the incident that you could tell.
If they're stuck in the snow, people are going to stand and laugh at them and photograph them. But they're not in any danger.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then the last question. The last question I have for you guys, just before we go, is how concerned are you now about the subsequent protests that could take place, especially given the fact that Minneapolis has already been through so much when it comes to those kind of protests?
I'm not worried about a protest. What I'm worried about is the reaction from the government with what's the rhetoric already that we're hearing about this professional agitation and all of that. That's what I'm worried about.
I am worried about that too, that they will bring in outside agitators. Actually, the protest community in the Twin Cities is pretty well organized, but it's a lot of the outsiders who come in who try to cause
We want to take you to Minneapolis, where DHS Secretary Kristi Noem is speaking.
Here in Minneapolis today. Any loss of life is a tragedy, and I think all of us can agree that in this situation it was preventable. I've spoken to the president today on the situation here on the ground. I also just got off the phone a little while ago with Governor Walz and spoke to him as well. I want to reiterate first with all of you the facts of what happened today. At 10:25 a.m. Central Time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement were carrying out lawful operations here in Minneapolis. Because of the adverse weather that Minneapolis has seen in recent snow, one of the vehicles became stuck and ensnared in the snow. Law enforcement were attempting to push out this vehicle, and when a mob of agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues. He was treated at a local hospital, has been released, and is now with family. I encourage the American people at this point in time to pray for him, but also to pray for the deceased's family and her loved ones. Today alone in this country, there have been 4 different domestic terrorist attacks on federal officers by the ramming of vehicles. 3 of them happened here in Minneapolis. We've seen over 100 of these vehicle rammings happen in just recent weeks, and this must stop. ICE alone is facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them and an 8,000% increase in death threats against all of them. In fact, the very same officer who was attacked today had previously been dragged by an anti-ICE rioter who had rammed him with a car and drug him back in June. He sustained injuries at that time as well. And let me remind you why we're all here in this city today and why we've been here. In communities across this country and here in Minneapolis, we're just enforcing the laws that we have in this country. For years under President Biden, tens of millions of dangerous criminal illegal aliens, terrorists, and suspected terrorists were allowed to invade our country over our southern border. They were allowed to steal, to defraud, and to perpetuate violence against American citizens. Regardless of who your mayor or who your governor is, President Trump promised every single American that he would make America safe again. He promised every single American that he would work to protect them from dangerous criminals. Since Governor Walz has been in charge of Minnesota, we have seen homicides go up by over 50%. That's also during Mayor Frye's tenure as well. Since President Trump took office, Governor Walz has released over 470 violent criminals back onto the streets here in Minneapolis. He has another 680 of them still within his jurisdiction that he could give to us today to face the consequences for their crimes. Because Governor Walz and Mayor Frye refuse to protect Minnesotans and instead they protect these criminals, that's why we are here. And we didn't just show up yesterday, we've always been here. But we're surging operations because of the dangerous situation we see in this country and because we're no longer going to allow illegal criminals to damage and harm, to kill, to sexually abuse, to proliferate drugs, and to steal American taxpayers' dollars. This state has faced unprecedented immigration fraud. It's seen unprecedented benefit fraud. Individuals were allowed to come into this country and set up fake companies and fake nonprofits and divert billions of dollars away from American citizens and those vulnerable citizens who truly needed the services from those programs. This city has burned before, and your mayor and your governor let it happen. President Trump is not going to let that happen. He and our federal law enforcement officers are here to bring peace and to bring public safety and to ensure that criminal activity is stopped and that people who perpetuate it will face consequences. Since we have been here in recent weeks, we have arrested over 1,500 criminals off of the streets. Our law enforcement has arrested murderers, known and suspected terrorists, child pedophiles, and other brutal criminals that were protected here in this city. We should all work together to protect our citizens. We should all protect the men and the women and the families who live here in Minneapolis, who live in Minnesota, and live throughout this entire country. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for focusing on the important work that our federal officers do and make sure that we're focused on the priorities of this country, and that's making sure that we're keeping people safe. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
So last year, just
Let me do this.
I say that he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's very clear that this individual was harassing and impeding law enforcement operations. Our officer followed his training, did exactly what he's been taught to do in that situation, and took actions to defend himself and defend his fellow law enforcement officers. The officer was hit by the vehicle. She hit him. He went to the hospital. A doctor did treat him. He has been released, but he's going to spend some time with his family. I can't, but the FBI will continue the investigation and release more facts when it's appropriate. No, we're following the standard protocol procedures we do in situations like this. When there's an officer-involved shooting, we make sure that we get the facts and that we are getting the statements from everybody involved and make sure that investigators are handling the decisions. No, we're still out on the streets doing our work to get dangerous criminals off of the streets of Minneapolis. You know, Tim and I have known each other for years. We served in Congress together. We both ran for governor the same year and have served as governor at the same times. So we were colleagues, and we discussed what happened here today. We have two very different viewpoints of it. I talked specifically about the fact that we have laws. They need to be enforced. He knows that I believe sanctuary policies have protected criminals and placed a priority of them over the citizens that live here, and he knows we'll continue to do our work, and I encouraged him to work with us. We've never had a cooperative arrangement with law enforcement here. Whenever we've done investigations, whenever we've done police work, when we've been doing what we can to bring people to justice for the crimes that they commit, we haven't had the cooperation of the state of Minnesota or the city police here under the mayor's direction. If you talk to any of these federal law enforcement officers, they'll say that when they call for backup in a situation, that it's hit and miss. They were grateful today that the police chief and local law enforcement showed up at the scene and helped secure it to make sure that nobody was harmed and that the FBI could do their work. But I would encourage them to work with us, that we could form a partnership that would make sure that individuals have the opportunity to have a safe Minneapolis.
Okay, so that is Homeland Security Secretary Christine Noem. And what we will do is there is a developing story which is coming, and this is from Raw Alert that's on X. So it states Minneapolis public schools officials have announced that all public schools will be closed Thursday and Friday as a precaution and growing safety concerns and unrest. And this is a developing story which is coming, and we will definitely be following that. From Christine Noem's press conference, what we will do is go to Tim Walz, because Tim Walz, that he is a governor, and he addressed the media this afternoon. Yeah, he did address the media. So let's take a listen to Tim Walz when he addressed the media. He's the governor of Minneapolis over there, Minnesota. So let's take a listen to it.
It's governing by reality TV. And Colonel Bogojevic of the Minnesota State Patrol. This morning we learned that an ICE officer shot and killed someone in Minneapolis. My deepest condolences to the family, to the loved ones who had to learn about it on national television. We have been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday, I said exactly that. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV, and today that recklessness cost someone their life. I've reached out to Secretary of Homeland Security Christine Noem, and I'm waiting to hear back. Let me be clear, Donald Trump and his administration may not care much about Minnesota. That's been pretty evident, but we love this state. We won't let them tear us apart. We'll not turn against each other. To Minnesotans, I say this: I feel your anger. I'm angry. They want a show. We can't give it to them. We cannot. If you protest and express your First Amendment rights, please do so peacefully, as you always do. We can't give them what they want. The hearts and minds of the people in this state are on our side. To Americans, I ask you this: please stand with Minneapolis. To Minnesotans, know that our administration is going to stop at nothing to seek accountability and justice. The State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension are working on the investigation. We have activated the State Emergency Operations Center. State Patrol and Minnesota National Guard leadership is connected with the Minneapolis Police Department, the St. Paul Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the DNR, and Minnesota's Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We have activated dozens of members of the State Patrol's mobile response team. And from here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community, they're business owners, they're construction professionals. They are Minnesotans. Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight. We will not take the bait. We will continue to update you, Minnesota, as we get more information. Now I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Bob Jacobson of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor mentioned, my name is Bob Jacobson. It is my honor to serve as the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. First of all, I want to acknowledge the reason that we are all here. The loss of life is not anything anyone would ever want. We fully expect that the community will want to peacefully demonstrate their anger or frustration. Minnesota residents and visitors have the right to peacefully demonstrate. We recognize that demonstrations are often driven by strong emotions, beliefs, and certainly a desire to be heard. Our role is to help ensure everyone can express themselves without anyone getting hurt. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety's role through the Minnesota State Patrol is to ensure safety, protect constitutional rights, keep roads accessible, and above all, to prevent harm. Our top priority is public safety. Our focus is keeping demonstrators, community members, drivers, and law enforcement safe, especially during moments of heightened tension or uncertainty. Demonstrations must remain safe and lawful, particularly around roadways. We will join with our partners to support safety while respecting the right to protest. With that in mind, I'd like to share a few safe and lawful ways to demonstrate. Minnesotans can safely and legally express their views in many ways, including getting together peacefully with others in public spaces, marching or walking, not on roadways, making your voice heard through chants, speeches, and displaying signs, being present in public areas where pedestrians are allowed, gathering in designated or permitted areas, and these actions will allow people to express themselves while protecting the safety of everyone involved. Unsafe or illegal actions could result in fines or arrests. Certain behaviors create serious hazards that threaten public safety, disrupt emergency services, or put people at risk. These actions could result in fines or arrest. Demonstrating on or entering a freeway on foot, walking on highways, throwing objects, starting or setting fires, damaging property or graffiti, using illegal fireworks, displaying or using illegal weapons, reckless or dangerous driving, especially near pedestrians, and certainly assaultive, aggressive, or riotous behavior toward anyone. We all want definitive answers to what happened today. Our Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is working in conjunction with the FBI to investigate this morning's shooting. As you know, we don't comment on active investigations, but also keep in mind that this is an investigation is also in its infancy. So any speculation about what had happened would be just that. And we will not engage in speculation. With that, I will turn it back over to the Governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'd be glad to take any questions. Yeah, and I can let General Schaefer talk about this. It so happens it's a training weekend. We've got about 7,500 troops in training at our sites, training sites across the state. What it is, and in the National Guard, you give a warning order, which is a heads up of something could be coming. That just allows people to think about what they would need, what it would mean to mobilize, what it would mean to put them in. And I could let the General talk a little bit about this. Obviously, since the summer of 2020, we had a lot of work done on teams being ready to make sure that civil unrest. And what that means, and I think Commissioner Jacobson was very clear, and I want Minnesotans to hear this from me, the desire to get out and protest and to speak up to this administration of how wrong this is, that is a patriotic duty at this point in time, but it needs to be done safely. And I think the Commissioner simply just laid out some of those parameters. We can do that. This is the peaceful resistance that we need. Simon, you want to say a few things about what that means to have them on the ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor. So for the military, Minnesota National Guard is comprised of 13,000 soldiers and airmen. We live all across and work throughout Minnesota. A warning order is just an initial step to increase your preparations. The Minnesota Guard is always prepared to respond and support state agencies and the citizens of Minnesota. So what that means for us today is just some additional checks on equipment that is ready at all times, and maybe some additional phone calls to service members who might be activated, but no activations. We are embedded with our at the operations center to just continue parallel planning in the event that we are needed to support.
Thanks, General. And I would make note, Mary, and to Minnesotans on this about the National Guard, they're there to protect you and protect your constitutional rights. These are our neighbors. They don't wear masks. They don't bust in from somewhere else. They're not here to cause hassles to you or what we saw today, the tragedy. Having them at the ready to make sure, because when we see these types of things happen, and we saw it after the murder.
If it happens so, and this is going to be so scary and also going to be uninteresting. So the National Guard is going to be, so the states would be against the federal. It will be an interesting one to watch, but we hope and pray it doesn't get to that angle. But we pray that there will be peace and there will be calm in Minnesota. So as Tim was saying, so we hope it doesn't escalate to that angle.
In it, and why the vast majority of those protests were peaceful expressions of their First Amendment rights, there were those that destroyed property and put people at risk. The National Guard is there to make sure that peaceful protests are able to be done, and that those that want to do the destruction are stopped from doing that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I think apparently by a federal agent. Minnesotans who were there to express their First Amendment rights. I think we've seen this to have folks ready. The gatherings that were down there today, I think this shocked everyone. People showed up as they should. There's people putting flowers down on a memorial. There's people expressing their anger. It's just as these situations develop, we decide when we need to move these people out. And I think the local reporters know well on this, both unfortunately and for us, the upside of this is that we're very good and we've had practice at this. And I just want to, again, implore Minnesotans, I am not telling you not to express your anger or your frustrations or the outrage that we have. Look, this was totally predictable, as I said it yesterday, and it was totally avoidable. And I just want to remind you, too, that local law enforcement, we get no coordination. They don't tell us they're coming. They don't say why they're sending the largest deployment in American history to Minneapolis. They're not making us any safer. We don't have any of that coordination. They should be talking to us when we do these things. Let us know. We're going to be down here. This is going to happen. We don't have that. So when you see local law enforcement or state patrol, or if it would take the National Guard, we're there responding to the chaos they've created too, but our role is to make sure that we're protecting Minnesotans so that something like this doesn't happen. I have not. The question was, have I spoken to the individual's family? No, we do not have a definitive ID on this individual. And I look, I'm going to note to all of you, I think it's really important, and the professionals do this, and they train me to do this. This is an open investigation. You need to be very careful about it. I know that many of you, myself included, have seen a very difficult video to watch, one where there's a family member watched their family member be shot and killed in front of them. It's beyond me that apparently from the federal government, from the Homeland Security Director herself, has already determined who this person was, what their motive was, and they hadn't even been taken out of the vehicle. We're not living in a normal world. And so, no, I have not. And I want to be very careful because I know how painful this is. I know how painful it is right now. I'm saying person and all that. This is a human being. This very well is an individual's child, a parent, and we don't know that yet. So, no, I have not, but once we do, we will. So, yes. Please. Colonel, would you like to do that?
And then also,
Colonel.
So the governor was mentioning mobilizing more of the state patrol. How many state patrol people are on the ground in Minneapolis right now? And should there have been more state patrol people on the ground like a couple weeks ago when I came?
So the question was, how many state patrol troopers have been deployed to the city of Minneapolis? Right now, we don't talk typical numbers because that is considered security information. We do have a specialized team that does deal with crowd control, and so they have been deployed. But again, they are from all over the state of Minnesota, so they will come in tiers to the state.
And they had heard to some extent before today?
No, it was in response to this event.
Sorry, just to clarify the intention of deploying National Guard, is there any chance that the National Guard will be deployed against federal agents to protect Minnesotans?
I'm sorry. What was it?
Has the National Guard ever been deployed against federal agents to protect Minnesotans, given the context of what happened earlier today?
Well, I said this yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government. I think in this case that the National Guard is their main mission. They have a dual mission. There's the federal mission when they're under Title 10 orders, and then they're under Title 32 orders. In this warning order, there's nothing officially been done yet. If I am to activate them as the Commander-in-Chief of the Minnesota National Guard, I will issue the executive order to the Minnesota National Guard, and then they will be put in state duty status. And as you've seen over the last few years, that could be flood prevention, that could be after a wind-blowing storm up in the north, up in Bemidji, or it could be COVID or George Floyd response. In this case, again, it doesn't necessarily change the mission. They're there to protect Minnesotans. They're there to serve Minnesotans. I think the thing that is so challenging in the moment we're in is we don't see a desire to work with us on public safety. We hear a demonization of our state. We see people coming in who don't know our community, and we see this massive display for the TVs that we're trying to understand how is this coordinated. And some of you watch the videos on there, total chaos. And look, I have very limited work in this is the training in the National Guard, but I've had a lot of training now to watch how our professionals operate. After this person was shot, federal agents milling around, touching the vehicle at a crime scene and things, I don't know what to tell you, and I don't quite know how to respond to the question other than my primary responsibility as governor is the protection of the people of Minnesota, and you can be assured whether it's the State Patrol or whether it's the National Guard, their deployment is there to protect Minnesotans from whatever it is. If it's an act of nature, if it's a global pandemic, or in this case, if it is a rogue federal agent. I don't know at this time, and I want to be very careful. It's unprecedented that we have the federal government's already determined exactly what's happened here and the motives of an individual that we don't even know the name. They don't know the name, and that's very difficult. So, well, one more, Dana. Dana. Look, and I understand the uniqueness of this moment in this week, following this week, seeing what's happening in the backdrop of a show hearing in D.C. My job is to govern, and my job is to see what the facts are. This happened a couple of hours ago, and we're already pitting American against American. All of you saw a video in your eyes. We have a chaotic situation caused by the largest deployment in American history of federal agents into a community with no communication to locals. We had a chaotic situation where an individual is in their car, shot and killed. And so, look, I want to be very cautious here because Donald Trump will make this about me. He will make this about politics. This is about public safety, and this is about normalcy. To Americans who are watching this, if you're in Portland or you're in LA or you're in Chicago or you're wherever they're coming next, stand with us. Stand with us against this. This was so preventable, so unnecessary, and I don't know. I hope. Maybe we're at the McCarthy moment. Do you have no decency? Do you have no decency? We have someone dead in their car for no reason whatsoever, and I don't want to be right about this, but I said if they do this, they're going to create a chaotic situation where someone innocent's going to get killed, and they did it. And now we hear more political rhetoric. Enough. Enough is enough. And so to Minnesotans, don't take the bait. Do not take the bait. Do not allow them to deploy federal troops into here. Do not allow them to invoke the Insurrection Act. Do not allow them to declare martial law. Do not allow them to lie about the security and the decency of this state. And let's let this investigation play itself out. Let's make sure we protect our neighbors. I encourage you to use your First Amendment rights and all of your constitutional rights, but do so in a peaceful manner. We'll gather back with you as soon as we gather more information that needs to be put out. But again, stay safe, Minnesotans, and we'll be back with you. Thank you, Bob.
So that was a press conference from Governor Tim Walz. So what we will do is you get an update from the White House. Also, CBS News correspondent also give an update from the White House so that we take a listen to it as well. But from what Tim Walz is saying is he doesn't want it to get to that situation that Minnesota would also issue the warning. Like also they will also activate their warning, and it will be very bad. So they are all praying these things de-escalate over there. So let's take a listen to the White House correspondent.
Only about a mile from where George Floyd was killed back in 2020. So it's an entire neighborhood inside a city, inside a region and a state that's been reeling for several years because of law enforcement-related activity, because of the focus of this White House on Minnesota, given its Democratic control. And so the emotions there in that neighborhood and in that city, obviously, quite raw. And we'll see how the White House and the federal government responds to it in the coming hours.
And she does point out that there has been a major surge in Minnesota, an influx of 1,500 agents, ICE enforcement and removal operation agents, 650 Homeland Security investigations agents, a 15-fold increase in the usual ICE presence in the region. True. Ed, I'm curious, based on your knowledge of typical cabinet communication with local and state authorities after something like this, is it unusual that Governor Walz has not gotten a call back yet from DHS Secretary Noem?
Not necessarily in the Trump administration, no. But not knowing her exact whereabouts, it could be that she is traveling or otherwise engaged. She was, remember, she met with and was interviewed by Nicole Skanga in Minneapolis on Monday, or on Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, and she's on the U.S.-Mexico border in South Texas. She was reviewing operations there, given that Homeland Security has vast array of responsibilities across the country on all sorts of matters. So we'll see if she makes contact with him at some point, or if some other senior federal official does, what that communication is like. This is obviously a really challenging one for both sides, and there's no love lost between the Trump administration, the Trump White House, and Governor Walz, who, of course, has been such a focus of the president's criticism in recent weeks, and the White House quite pleased to hear this week that he decided not to run for re-election, in part saying earlier today that it was clear that he was probably going to lose that, or he realized that he was going to lose that re-election because of this renewed focus on alleged fraud in the state. That came up during the daily press briefing with the press secretary. So we'll wait and hear, and if we get anything on exactly any federal to Minnesota communication, we'll pass it along. And again, we've seen no specific response from the president to the governor and the mayor's calls.
So this was early in the afternoon, right? This was earlier in the afternoon. So because we are just giving you this evening, and there is an information that has come from the White House, and I'll read that before I leave this show, before we end the show.
That they get out of Minnesota. If anything, that might compel them to just double down. We'll see, Lindsay.
And O'Keefe, thank you so much. Let's bring in the head of our crime and policing unit, Anna Schechter. Anna, what are your thoughts and comments after that news conference and post from President Trump?
Well, I wasn't surprised by what Governor Walz said. He took his swipes at President Trump, the White House, and the immigration policy that flooded his state with ICE agents. We know that it was an ICE agent who pulled the trigger. There has been tension in multiple communities around the country over the last few months, and sometimes that's been Border Patrol agents, sometimes it was National Guard. In this instance, it was an ICE agent who pulled that trigger. And so I wasn't surprised by what the governor said. He's been diametrically opposed to President Trump on this specific issue of the immigration crackdown and has been outspoken about that. And I also learned, and the governor reiterated what we heard from the police chief earlier today, that the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in the state of Minnesota is investigating this in partnership with the FBI. So that's a really interesting point, and I think an important one. The Minneapolis Police Department secured the scene as a crime scene. That's another important point. They're gathering evidence. Investigators are going to look at the track marks of the wheels in the snow. They're going to measure the angles of the turn of the vehicle. They're going to try to measure the speed at which the vehicle was going. There are a lot of calculations that go into these investigations. And they're very specific. They have tools to do this. And all of that work has already probably begun at this time. And so let's see what that investigation finds, because different angles of the video show different things. President Trump and some of his supporters have been tweeting out a third angle that I've seen, which is from a little bit further away, and you see the vehicle accelerate. It appears to me she was shot and maybe her foot was on the gas pedal, and that's why the car accelerated and then crashed into another vehicle. This was right after or just as that lethal shot was fired. And so investigators are going to try to figure out, is that exactly what happened? Did she put her foot on the gas? And they're going to be analyzing every single angle of this. So all of that is underway, and that is going to potentially go to a prosecutor, probably what I would say is a local prosecutor, potentially, who might decide to bring a charge.
Okay, there are two things I want to ask you about, and one is, I believe, who killed the...
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just give you this. So I said it earlier that I will give you what the White House would report. That is from the president himself, Donald J. Trump. This is what he wrote. I have just viewed a clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting who then violently, willfully, and viscously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and the ICE agents on a daily basis. They are just trying to do their job of making America safe. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate. President Donald J. Trump. So this is from the White House. That was earlier this afternoon. So what I'll do is Jacob Ferry also spoke this afternoon, who is also Minneapolis mayor. And I would want you guys to also listen to him as well.
This city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead.
Now we have new pictures of the aftermath of that shooting. You can see a bullet hole in the front windshield of that red SUV, which had crashed into a pole after the shooting. Pictures show the driver's side headrest and seat splattered with blood. I want to bring in CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga live for us at the scene. Nicole, what do we know exactly about what happened in the moments leading up to the shooting? We know that there were personnel, immigration agents from ICE ERO, enforcement and removal operations, that were conducting immigration targeted operations in this neighborhood. And folks we've been talking to on the street here, neighbors, say that they had seen this federal law enforcement presence for days and for weeks. And just to set the scene for you here, there is a growing vigil behind me for the 37-year-old woman who was killed. We are less than a mile away from where George Floyd was killed at the hands of police. And here, just talking to neighbors, talking to eyewitnesses, there's grief, there's tears. We saw protests get very tense earlier today with ICE agents deploying tear gas canisters, individuals wheezing, choking in the streets, really standoffs between protesters and federal law enforcement. And the federal law enforcement footprint here at the scene, of course, is large. We've seen FBI personnel who will take the lead in investigating this ICE-related shooting. But beyond that, in the city of Minneapolis, we have seen more than 2,000 federal agents descend on the city. That is the single largest DHS deployment of federal agents under the Trump administration. Bigger than LA, bigger than New York, and bigger than Chicago. And the number of ICE ERO agents has increased 15 times fold. Now, we know that the agent who opened fire today was an ICE ERO agent. We are awaiting more details on that, but we know that that agent should have been trained in use of force policy and only opened fire in the instance of immediate harm or possible death based on ICE protocol and DHS protocol. Now, we spoke with the Homeland Security Secretary yesterday, who expressed concern for her agents here on the ground, acknowledging that the situation has been very tense, but saying that agents are here in the name of public safety. When we posed that to eyewitnesses today, they said it's the opposite, and they would like to see federal law enforcement off their streets. We know that Governor Walz spoke just minutes ago, telling folks that he has been warning the federal government for weeks that this would happen, and that he has reached out to the DHS secretary today and is waiting to hear back. Nicole Skanga, live for us at the scene in Minneapolis. Thank you so much, Nicole. We're also hearing from a witness who says he saw the ICE agent fire his weapon. He tells us he looked outside his window and saw hundreds of armed agents in front of his home.
And heard the car horns honking, alerting people in the area that ICE was coming through. I've heard the honking a few times, but it kept going. It was right outside. Lots of, nothing really concrete has landed. It doesn't feel like it's set in. It doesn't totally feel real, to see hundreds of armed, masked agents in the street in front of my house.
Joining us live now is CBS News senior coordinating producer Anna Schechter. And a lot to go through here, but let's begin with that clash between federal agents and protesters in the aftermath of this shooting. What did you see?
Well, you saw multiple witnesses, bystanders, shouting at the federal agents, asking them why they did what they did. But I also want to go back to what preceded the shooting, and we really don't know what happened in the minutes leading up to it. But certainly in the 30 seconds leading up to it, according to the videos that I've seen, there was already a heightened sense of tension and stress there in that neighborhood because people didn't want ICE agents there. They were shouting at the ICE agents, telling them to get out of there. And then when the victim was pulling away, 2 agents were trying to stop her from leaving. And one of the agents was even grabbing onto the outside handle of the vehicle door, trying to get her out of the car. They also shouted at her to exit the vehicle. Why is that? That's a big question. I'd like to know the answer to that question. Then she started to try to drive away. There was a 3rd agent standing just in front of the car, and he is the one that fired that shot. And in the video showing the aftermath, we see a bullet hole in the front windshield of the car, and we learned that the victim was shot in the face and killed. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. And at that point, you see these witnesses shouting in shock at what happened. And some agents went to her, administered first aid, and obviously 911 was called, and she was transported to the hospital. But it is just a shocking scene. It was already tense yesterday. It was even more this morning, but we don't know exactly what led up to this. And I think a review of that and an investigation is currently underway by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehensions in tandem with the FBI, and they want to find out exactly what happened. And a lot of detail is going to be going into that report so that we, members of the public, hopefully will get that report and can get all the details.
I want to dig in a little bit deeper into that investigation portion of this, but first, I want to talk about what city officials had to say. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says that he wants ICE to get out of the city. He also called the agent acted in self-defense.
So, I want to do something to see if I could get the mayor's, that is Minnesota's mayor's statement or press conference. Let me see if I could get it. That'll be helpful. I don't know. I'm trying hard to see if I could get it. If I get it, I would do well to bring that. Okay. No, this is something I should get. Let me see. Let me. Okay. Yeah. I think it's here. I'll try them probably because
we collectively are going to do everything possible to get to the bottom of this, to get justice.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah.
Listen up, parents. Want to start building generational wealth?
Generational wealth.
Are going to do everything possible to get to the bottom of this, to get justice.
This will be our last press conference for the day.
And to make sure that there is an investigation that is conducted in full. But what we do know is that a 37-year-old woman is dead and that she was shot by ICE. We've dreaded this moment since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis. Not only is this a concern that we've had internally, we've been talking about it. They are not here to cause safety in this city. What they are doing is not to provide safety in America. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets. And in this case, quite literally killing people. So They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed. As soon as it happened and we learned of the incident, we had several priorities. The first, of course, was to get the victim to the hospital and to get care as soon as possible. To the family, I'm so deeply sorry. There's nothing that I can say right now that's going to make you or your relatives, friends of the victim feel any better. There were, I believe, 2 Minneapolis police officers that responded and were in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The second was to get ICE off of the scene. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of ICE and federal officers that were there at the time. Having them there was only causing more chaos. Having them there was only making a difficult situation even more problematic, and one that, yes, they created themselves. There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here.
Wow.
Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you. And it's also on you to leave. It's on you to make sure that further damage, further loss of life and injury is not done. We're going to be working towards justice as quickly as we possibly can right now, and justice is what we've all got to get. Next, a message to our community. Look, we all know that the agenda of this Trump administration is to create chaos. Let us respond right now with our best versions of self. This is a moment where all of us in Minneapolis and beyond, we can rise to the occasion. We can show them who we are. We can show them the kind of courage, bravery, love, and compassion that makes Minneapolis, Minneapolis, and that makes America, America. We are better than a bunch of ICE agents being deployed to cities around the country and ripping apart families and communities. We're better than that. And so we are going to meet that hate with love. We are going to meet that despair with hope. We are going to meet that injustice with constitutional justice ourselves. And we're going to make sure that in this very difficult moment, we do not take the bait that these ICE agents are trying to create and that the federal government, to be clear, wants. They want us to respond in a way that creates a military occupation in our city. They want an excuse to come in and show the kind of force that will create more chaos and more despair. Let's not let them. Let's rise to this occasion. Let's show them something far more beautiful than the kind of division that they're trying to stoke. Let's show them unity of purpose, of love, and the courage of our conviction. Our conviction, to be clear, is rock solid, and it is for our neighbors, all of our neighbors. It's for people who have lived here for 80 years. It is for new immigrants who have made this city a better place. That's the kind of love that we're going to show up with right now. If you're angry, I get it. I am too. If you're feeling that kind of despair, it's understandable. Let's show them who we can be. Let's show up with peace. To march, to protest, to hug one another, to love all the way with peace. Do not give them what they want. Finally, we've got a lot of work that needs to happen right now to make sure that, first, of course, the scene was secured as much as possible, that we were able to get the victim, now deceased, to the hospital. We've got a lot of work to do in the coming days. I want to thank our city enterprise for the work that they have done, but more importantly, what they're about to do, because this is going to be heavy and our city has been through a lot. We also know that we're prepared to do right for people. Among them is our chief of police. I'll invite him up.
My name is Brian O'Hara, B-R-I-A-N-O''H-A-R-A. I am the Minneapolis Police Chief. This morning, Minneapolis police officers received a report of federal law enforcement being involved in a deadly force incident, meaning shots had been fired. Minneapolis police officers responded to the scene. We arrived and found a woman with a gunshot wound to the head. Life-saving measures were performed at the scene, including CPR. The woman was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center, where she has since been pronounced deceased. The preliminary information that we have indicates that this woman was in her vehicle and was blocking the roadway on Portland Avenue, midway between 33rd Street and 34th Street in the city. At some point, a federal law enforcement officer approached her on foot, and the vehicle began to drive off. At least 2 shots were fired. The vehicle then crashed on the side of the roadway. Minneapolis police officers secured the crime scene and assisted in trying to preserve the evidence that is there. We have since turned over the scene both to the Federal Bureau of Investigation as well as the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which will be conducting an investigation into this use of deadly force. I want to thank the mayor, city council president, other members of the city council, state legislators that were on the scene. This has been a very difficult time for everyone in the city. And this is obviously a very, very tragic situation where a woman has lost her life. That being said, in addition to this tragedy, which unfortunately we did predict, we were seriously concerned about further escalation from the scene. And I want to thank the elected officials that came themselves to help us prevent that from happening, as well as the individuals on that scene that remained peaceful and that abided by law enforcement instructions so that we could preserve that scene and ensure that a full and transparent investigation can take place. That being said, I just echo the mayor's comments that we ask that the community continue to call for peace. We understand people are going to be upset about what happened, and people are going to want to exercise their First Amendment rights. But please do so safely and lawfully to ensure that we do not have any further tragedy in this city or destruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, council members. Commissioner, I'll open it to questions.
Any idea on the identity?
Okay, so let me read what the Minnesota police statement that they brought some few hours ago. This is it. The Minnesota police. The Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association stands firmly behind law enforcement officers' accountability under the law and the safety of every Minnesota community. Irresponsible, reckless rhetoric from political leaders attacking law enforcement has real and dangerous consequences for officers on the streets. When officers are vilified, demonized, or used as political props, it fuels hostility, emboldens bad actors, and puts lives directly at risk. MPO calls on leaders to stop the inflammatory language and respect the legal and investigative processes. So this is from Minnesota Police and Peace Office. So that is it from that. But what we currently know is that we know one person is injured and one person is dead. That is the woman who was shot dead by an ICE officer. Again, we also know that the ICE officer was also injured and was sent to the hospital. Currently, he's also doing well. So we pray that the officers and also the security personnel make sure the place is very safe. It's almost time for me to go, but what we are learning is that the community are also coming together to just they organize a vigil night for the disease. So it is currently ongoing, and we thank you for joining us this evening, and we pray that the disease and the family, we wish them well, and also the guy who was also injured. That's where we will end our show today. Thank you for joining, and see you tomorrow.